Persona 3 Reload is everything I wanted and more. I mean, re-engaging in this rich school full of depressed teenagers is something I've wanted to do for a long, long time. It's a game that fans have been hyping up forever, considering P3 needed a definitive version. I played all of Persona 3 Portable, started off S.E.E.S, and although nobody really wants to admit it, they proved that each version fragmented the story Kingdom Hearts style. Actually, not that bad, but not to say that each version didn't have its ups, like FemC or F.E.S.'s more concrete conclusion, but still, there was always a piece missing, no matter what version you played. Oh, and F.E.S. is out of the equation now. You'd miss out on some cool cutscenes, some character interactions, or effects because of the engine. F.E.S. didn't have direct control, and Portable was on PSP hardware. I think that should say enough. So to say that I was excited for Reload would be an understatement. Like Akihiko, you could say,
I've been waiting for this!
A quick video, numerous articles, the artists of Persona 3 becoming my top on Spotify after the AX panel. Basically, any of my friends can tell you that I was
annoying, incomprehensible.
He's never gonna make you or me play it.
He's the person that said this is better than water, and you need water to survive.
I just really wanted to talk about this game. So, here we are. If there's anything that Reload did, it was make this emotional story about loss, perseverance, and appreciation accessible in an insanely higher quality. Oh, and also, gun. Reload was supposed to be the best version of the original story, and it knocks that out of the park. It tweaks all of the worst bits, adds more style, and truly remakes the entire base game in Unreal Engine 4 while staying true to its predecessors. I'll be the first one to say that Persona 3 Reload definitely is not perfect, even though it answered a lot of my prayers, and if I'm being completely honest, perfect just sounded like a cool buzzword. Yet the core ideas of the game are here in full force. There's always going to be some annoying aspects, like Reload missing a few great things other versions may have, but I'll be damned if this isn't a perfect example of how to do a remake. Persona 3 Reload has that early 2000s hip-hop feel from the original while keeping a modern-esque touch, taking inspiration from its sequels. It's sort of weird to say that I'm reminded of the Wii era when this was on PlayStation 2, but it's got that oddly nostalgic perspective thanks to how true its landscape is to the first. It's apparent from the second that you launch the game up that Persona's crazy amount of style is here in all of its glory. I never thought the series could top Burn My Dread, considering it was my favorite opening in the franchise, but then they somehow threw Full Moon for Life at us. It is damn near perfect. It's got the oceany feel, the smooth animation of Persona 5 Royal's opening, and a smart color play without feeling old. The slick 2D animation is both fluid and laced with foreshadowing. It's especially cool when the lyrics are packed with small, not-so-secretive throwbacks too. The game UI is just as impressive, being much more alive and flowing. The sharp blue colors of the great new sprites incorporating that oomph that I feel this UI needed. And when I have the PS4 home screen over my UI text, I can't help but feel satisfied. Although the pause menus will always be the best. Initially, I was expecting these to be animated 2D images, but no, they are full 3D models designed to look 2D in the background of navigating the equipment page, going to change my config settings, or dumping incense into Junpei for the 50th time. I especially liked the stats page because it has those little icons that 3 is known for, accompanied by sharp character art. Including the mirror with everybody's eyes, it's a charming way to deliver the required information. One menu that honestly caught me off guard was the Velvet Room, with a much more card-centric look. The best part is Igor and Elizabeth moving on screen, putting a face to who is really helping you here. I liked when their mouths actually moved for the voice lines, which made me engage with the menus for some reason. The best changes are all these little touches that build up to polish the entire experience. You'll spend a lot of time on these pages, so if they look pretty, the game ends up flowing better. And that's only scratching the surface of how good this game actually is. Oh, and although I'll talk about it progressively later, I don't think I need to say too much about the music.
Just dial in your number, waited to press the last 2. They're all treating me small or medium. I'm extra large, big ticket, premium. Sun's up, another day goes by. Why is this exam song so good? One day in the night, let me paint the view.
This series wouldn't be as great as it is without the iconic soundtrack. I have to say, this OST has some of the best tracks in the entire series. Dare I say, taking my slot number 1 with the new Changing Seasons mix. The trumpet in this game is the only instrument that's a little rough. It's a bit too blaring and a lot sharper, which messes with a few tracks. But everything else is so much better that it almost overshadows it. The synth sounds, the beats laced into the old tracks, and that croaking tone. Though I don't necessarily know what instrument that is, it is the most satisfying piece of audio in this game. It's all done so expertly and composed beautifully. And I will always say, it's not a good Persona game if you don't pause to just take in the amazing soundtrack sometimes. Though there's a ton of quality of life improvements across this game, the area that saw the most upgrades was the social simulation. Take Portable as a reference here. It's fun, delivers the message, and has a bit of charm to it, but it's designed to just hop from point to point fast. The original game also had the same vibe with certain locked camera angles and a generally overhead look. It checks the boxes with a bit of pizzazz, yeah, but that's about it. The map in Reload still has its original charm, but the little bubbles above each location make it easier to pick up on what is available, especially social links. The originals kinda left you to your own devices, seeming to make you remember where one thing was or have to dig around to find a specific person. While it was one of the coolest things to think that you're discovering your own story, making it more personal, the new menus help to make the player get more out of the game. And that mystery is still somewhat there when a new link is introduced through another. But the maps are nothing compared to the actual locations. These graphics make the entire experience feel so cinematic. Unreal Engine really complements this title. It's the perfect balance between anime and realism. It's almost like I can feel the rays of sun on my face. I also like how I can finally save wherever I am instead of being locked to just the dorm. Of course, my muscle memory still kicks in, but now there's more freedom to just stop wherever. And the rewind feature! Oh, did that save me a few times. It's cool to use when you screw up an important dialogue choice, though it's a little counterintuitive when you have to rewind the entire day sometimes. The school community is also much more useful than ever before. Every piece of banter either tells a story, nudges the player in a new direction, or opens a new social link. It's a nice rip from Persona 5 that works better in this game. With Reload getting rid of the condition mechanic, the class answers giving courage or knowledge trade-offs was a cool way to still feel rewarded for interacting with the class, along with some of the classic actual learning parts of Persona. I do have to admit, I do miss being able to go into the bathroom and taking a crap larger than a Megidolone and coming out with the great buff for Tartarus, but now there's no hindrance of feeling too tired. But if you're still looking for some good connection to Tartarus, then Twilight Fragments are your friend. I liked the little collectathon that they set up in the explorable hubs, running around each location looking for that little blue light that'll get you more loot down the line. It's beneficial, and for once rewards you with exploring the overworld. Plus, you get them directly from leveling social links, translating those story scenes indirectly into equipment, costumes, or heals. And trust me, you won't want to miss social links anymore. I didn't know that I needed them fully voiced. You heard me right, fully voiced.
Well, do you notice anything different about me?
Every VA delivered a performance that felt realistic to the high school context. As the character gets more comfortable with the protagonist, the player gets more comfortable too, and it's easy to tell that from the other person's voice. The best confidant without a doubt is the Sun Arcana Akanari. I won't go into why I feel so damn much for him, mainly to avoid spoilers, but I'll say that it's best if you do this link completely blind. And I haven't even started to go into the new Dorm Life editions. The planner's cool when you get some great items for it, and the fridge adds some fun interactions that people will miss, but I haven't mentioned the one thing that Persona 3's Dorm Life really needed. Link episodes. The one gripe that held me back in Portable was that I sympathized with the members of S.E.E.S, but I didn't really feel too close to them. That is, either until late game or until I played FemC. But I digress, when Atlas said that they weren't doing FemC, everybody got a little worried. I just hope they kept part of these confidants, or at least their stories, alive. And all my prayers were answered, with some awesome combat buffs, items, and social stat benefits down the line. I cannot tell you how cool it was to see these 2 exclamation points on my screen, or find a character I loved with a little smiley face above their head. I especially enjoyed reading and growing plants with Junpei, making tea with Mitsuru, and cooking or watching horror movies with Yukari. The combat characteristics are insane and incentivize the player to adapt their setup to each party member's unique playstyle. And I mean, a Mediaron for 11 SP endgame is just nuts. There's just so many small things that make it feel lively. You can actually go throw your bag down and head back out without it. Characters are lazing around or using some facilities at any given day. There's actually certain days where members are busy for just life reasons instead of anything major, and Junpei can steal my f***ing takoyaki from the fridge, god! It's all these touches and new implementations that made the social half stand proud. It's so easy to feel engaged, simply due to how down-to-earth each individual is. All of these social links feel plausible, each of the S.E.E.S members have stories to tell and interests to share, and it's all out in the open. And even, for once, a silent Persona protagonist feels like he has a personality. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, shall we? That's not even past the surface yet. We need to dig deeper, or should I say, climb higher? Tartarus, in my opinion, was the main thing that I was worried about. Not because I didn't already fall in love with it, but because of the series' evolution. I was a bit worried it would be repetitive for a lot of new fans. I mean, yeah, you have your rare shadows and few treasure chests mix about the originals, but people who want more than just dungeon crawling could still feel a bit bored. It's not a bad thing since there were some aesthetic changes in the original that I enjoyed a ton, but it's just not varied enough to keep up with games of today. Tartarus was given so much life, with amazing visuals that made each and every block more fascinating than the last. New layouts and random generations made each level mysterious, gambling if the next floor was going to be small and compact or long and winding. It was a fresh break from games that have crafted and semi-randomized setups. What I didn't like before with Block Arco was now much creepier, lit better, and made me feel like Indiana Jones scaling a huge cavernous crypt. And the banter never failed to make me happy.
Spook is great, but I also miss Kirijo-senpai navigating. It kind of felt like getting stepped on.
Oh hey, looks like you're the only guy on the team tonight. I see. So this is what you would call a harem, correct?
Junpei, he's our man. If he can't do it, no one can. Now give me some double fives.
No.
Now the thing is, if it was just dungeon crawling, I believe it would have ended up just looking cool. But fret not, most of my issues with the original Tartarus were answered, specifically in 3 new inclusions: Petrified Shadows, Twilight Fragments, and the grace of this entire game, Monad Doors. The Petrified Shadows are these breakable pedestals that give the player different items, be it a treasure, a Twilight Fragment, or gems for use in the antique shop. It gives Mementos vibes, but in a game with a randomized dungeon at its core, it's more than welcome. The best benefit of them was definitely the gems, which made the antique shop more apparent. The loot pool is more rounded, where it all really feels like it culminates into better gear with a nice old lady willing to trade you some concerningly powerful equipment. Another similar addition is the blue things we picked off the floor earlier, Twilight Fragments. By far, the best inclusion to not only connect both halves of the game, but to add some more uncertainty and strategy to a harder playthrough. The few things that you can spend them on make players think about trading for a new accessory, or encountering a random chest with a Soma, or spending it on the boss floor for either a cool new weapon, a fun cosmetic, or the clock to regenerate all HP and SP. It forces prioritization and conservation of materials, especially when a little cutscene on a random floor can pop up with a cool chest. And I mean, gambling is fun, kids. Not with money though, but just with Twilight Fragments. Last, but definitely not least, is these big-ass red cathedral doors that bring you into the depths of Tartarus. The almighty Monad Doors! They freshen up battles between floors, and especially when you encounter one closer to a border floor, when your SP is getting lower, it introduces a dilemma of pushing on for better loot that's beneficial all around, or maybe even being prepared to re-enter Tartarus later, sacrificing a big portion of your power next time. The bosses in there are some of the most fun and challenging throughout the entire run. It ended up being a really refreshing way to introduce some more challenge. It's these aspects that make the core loop shine, when in reality, it hasn't really changed too much. Yes, there's a lot that has, but in its raw state, Persona 3 still had an exciting idea. Yes, it could get annoying after a while, especially with the weird shuffle quicktime events and predictable structures, but there's just a ton of little variations that made traversal and reload fill in the gaps. Knocks it out of the park, especially when it looks and sounds as beautiful as it does. On that note, I love the progression of Tartarus' music. Same goes for the original, but Reload made it sound crisp. You start with some simple piano and a beat. Grow into some deeper bass. Try out the cymbals with a brighter landscape and maybe throw in a little more melody. Toss up a mix of bass and cymbals, growing with the party. As the end seems near, start throwing in this ethereal track and raising the tension with some more bass. Then at the peak, harmonize strings and combine all the aspects in the earlier floors to make an amazing mix. And contrary to Mementos, I think it's hard to get tired of. The great music and set design carry over to the full moon boss fights too. The first boss, being the Priestess, has one of the coolest designs in the game, and has done so much justice on this cool train ride. But let's be real here. What good does any of this do without its iconic and franchise-defining battle loop? If there was one thing I praised the original Persona 3 titles for, it was its variety of physical skill options. To put it simply, it made the basic attack feel actually useful for once, especially when enemy matchups would play into who's in your party. One thing that was taken away though was the ability to give the protagonist any type of physical weapon. Though there isn't any way to accommodate that in the basic attacks, every party member's moveset has been shifted around to account for it. Yukari is now my mainstay party member. Junpei has access to every type of physical, and Mataru Kaja with an insane crit rate. Ken and Koromaru have non-insta-kill dark and light attacks. And before I get ahead of myself, there's basically just a few things tweaked about every character that make their abilities much more useful. And this is because of those damn physical types. It's more complex than Persona 4 and more well-rounded than Persona 5. Now for a surprisingly welcome addition, Fuka. Her new abilities are a peak of this game. She feels like a navigator that works as a backline party member instead of just an RNG machine. You can actually jam or shock enemies before battle, and Sylphidora actually proved to be crucial. I especially like how she has an SP gauge like everybody else. It makes the player conserve her energy either for buffs or to analyze. These new tweaks make you think and gradually solve the more puzzling combat situations. And speaking of new... God! Talk about good battle tracks! Every time, without fail, I get an adrenaline rush from this song. I expected this track to take over my love for Mass Destruction, which it did, but I'd even say this is my favorite Persona battle track, challenging even Last Surprise. And that's saying something. The Reload version of Mass Destruction is alright, although I do prefer the original. I think they did amazingly, but it's going down now with Lotus Juice pulling out his rap god powers into the track, with Azumi Takahashi there to carry it to another high is just so much better. Their voices go super well together, and the bass, the guitar, and the oh my god, I love this track, dude. This, mixed with the moon-themed UI, plus the cool 2D, 3D models on the side that adapt to your costumes, the cool shift cutscenes which I honestly cannot get enough of, and the best improvement by far with the combat UI. If you try and compare this cut-in to the original, it's like night and day. Reload has a much more descriptive, cinematic look to it that really makes the character look pissed. And the cool use of color, especially in the new mechanics screen, is just the cherry on top. While we're here, let's talk about Theurgy. I think it's one of the coolest super moves in any JRPG, considering not only the correlations to the character and cutscenes, but how they're acquired and charged. I think it's such an awesome idea that makes people play into the strengths of the character. For example, Mitsuru's will charge faster for inflicting ailments or charm, Yukari's will charge for healing, and Junpei's will when he hits a crit. It feels like each character has a deeper motivation that's rooted into their gameplay. The attacks end up feeling like a more reliable showtime attack, and when mixed with the combat characteristics, could end up being brutal final touches to finish any enemy off. Even Fuka's was fun. It still has that random chance aspect, but it adapts to the weakest point of your party at the given moment, especially when more powers are added on the wheel as she levels up. Time it right and the player can get an entire HP SP restore. With the way that Theurgies charge, you have to be careful and methodical with how you use them. It takes at least a good while in combat to make them come back. During a consecutive boss crawl, it's smart to have one on the back burner for the right time or a weakness, since they do scale with buffs. I think it's so cool how they try and challenge you with a new strategy. The last major change that I loved was shuffle time. Out with the quick time events that I could never get right, and in with Persona 4 Golden's mechanics. This allows the audience to craft their team with small benefits along the road that pay off as you continue. Plus, Arcana bursts are so much fun, especially since they increase the longevity of a Tartarus run. Say you're reaching the end of a block and you're about to hit a hard boss. The major Arcana cards are assembled in your deck perfectly, and you know they'll disappear on the way out. But you're low on SP, huh? Do you spend the items and push forward with these buffs, or do you wait until later, miss the benefits, but gain a full bar of HP and SP? I loved Persona 3 Portable for making me think and challenging my skills, and now there are more than enough ways that I still feel that same sensation. Although, there are pretty easy ways to overlevel myself or solve some of these problems easier down the line. It's a strange trade-off that really introduces another question. Did it solve any of the problems and gripes that I had with it, or not? So let's start off with my list. Going into the game, I had about 5 dream fixes. I wished for a more varied dungeon with interesting mechanics, a way to track overworld activities, XP share, or a way to experiment with my team without getting him too underleveled compared to my main party, and smoother experience pacing throughout the game, while still keeping the challenge of the original entries. Now, the first few of those were answered, and then some. Tartarus was more interesting than ever, and the social world is much more streamlined. The main map added the perfect UI social link tracker from Persona 5. It's very convenient. EXP share, though, is a strange case. In Tartarus, there's a chance that a clock room will spawn after opening a Twilight Fragment chest that levels up backline party members either to the protagonist's level or 13 above what they're already at. This sort of helped, but it didn't really solve it. Yeah, it works for a good while, but it only allows you to choose 2 backline party members. That's fine, but in reality, it kind of puts a wall to whoever you don't choose. This is definitely an incentive to try and cycle party members to accommodate each floor, but there's just not as much motivation to do that when you find a good party setup and the protagonist confuse any persona. Yes, you could go and optimize every single party member, but that would require a bit of grinding. I digress, this mechanic does promote replayability. It goes to show that experiencing a harder difficulty or going through New Game Plus will provide the opportunity to test new characters, but it's still a little sour to admit that you just can't do it in one run. They did fix my issue of underleveling, but they also overcorrected it. I was overleveled at one point, and shadows on a completely new floor started running away from me. That is partially my fault though, because it may have been me who overcorrected, choosing XP whenever I can in fear of this final boss. Moral of the story is, don't always choose XP in shuffle time. There are some really cool shuffle time benefits from the cups, with different battle perks that aren't just heals. Money is always useful, and the weaponry includes some awesome skill cards. The incentives to gain XP are worthwhile, just a little too powerful if it's the only thing you choose. In the end, these solutions were a nice mix of what the community seemed to love. Social links are more beneficial with Twilight Fragments, the Elizabeth quests were easier to engage with, accompanied by cooler rewards, and the antique shop was drastically improved. These things went under my radar in Portable, but stood out during Reload. It benefits the integration of these things when the spotlight covers more aspects of the game. Now, to be real, I've heard a few complaints across social media. So let's go through what I've seen. Not definitive, as it doesn't have FemC or the answer. I mean, fair enough, but they did say that this game was designed to polish the original Persona 3. We still have Aigis' social link, Koromaru walks, and its social episode with male party members, and now the answer is on the horizon. I can't say that they aren't justified with that, though. The game is $70. Yeah, this one's fair. I mean, sometimes I want to live, dude. A broke college student that spouts about video games online can't survive on ice soup forever. Plus, spending $105 for the expansion pass to get the entire experience is just, I think that's just nuts. So, that's pretty much everything excluding major spoilers for the story. To sum up the segment without spoilers, it's one of the best video game stories I have ever laid my eyes on, with genius writing, deep characters, a great world, and grounded realism that really makes me feel. So let's hop on this tram to the spoilery story segment, shall we? Persona 3's story was always amazing. It was a little cryptic, but it still has this dark charm. It's serious and goofy when it wants to be, showing the mood swings of day-to-day life in the midst of the end of the world. It has a theme of death, grief, and perseverance against all odds, while rooted deep in pieces of Jungian psychology. I'ma be straight up, I didn't like Strega much in Portable. Yeah, it was kinda cool to see evil Persona users, but they did feel kinda shoehorned in. Cool antagonists all things considered, but they didn't contribute to the overall problem that much, even though Takaya was amazing for the plot. Chidori was still super well written, versus Jin, who was Jin. It was easy to see Strega as a group of Persona users that just couldn't handle their powers. Still, I love the mystery that they made. Including in Portable when I thought that Shuji and Takaya were the same person. But Reload told these stories better. The protagonist gets a good few one-on-one sessions with Takaya, unearthing his motivation for abusing the Dark Hour, all of which is presented in a much cooler, intimidating fashion. Jin finally serves more purpose and proves to help clarify everything that I wanted to love so much about Strega. It's much easier to realize that they were the first experiments, and a little touch of being a lab rat for the Kirijo group made their actions all that more justified. It's actually a pretty creative dilemma. Takaya finding his evoker from a loose shadow, plus teaming up with Makoto, lets him try and lead S.E.E.S in the right direction, opposing what Akutsuki will eventually bring. It really makes the plot twist flourish. God, I love the new writing in this game. Most of it is ripped from S.E.E.S, but the subtle tweaks made things just a little bit more believable. Yukari's determination to find the answer to her dad's disappearance, Akihiko's firm resolve to prove his worth to his sister while avenging his fallen brother, Mitsuru dealing with the loss of her dad in the middle of a world-ending event, Junpei trying to find the meaning of his life while simultaneously falling in love, and then losing her. It all moves so fast, but is designed and written to feel that way. It's just so natural. It's even more apparent when the Link episodes are morphed to fit this story, namely Sonata's and Ken's adapting to fit Shinji's death, accompanied by their newfound determination while experiencing grief. Shinji's Link consistently had me tearing up, as he was the first character to actively think of death and acceptance. He seems to just be this dark, standoffish dude, but as you break his shell, you find he's trying to avoid everybody so that they won't get hurt. He knows his persona is slowly killing him, so he wants to do what he thinks is best for his two closest friends. And when he signed the papers to return to school, showing that he never forgot his promise to Mitsuru, oh my god, that hit me like a truck. Similarly, Ryoji's character development has sharpened to a fine point in Reload. I loved Ryoji in the original, and I love him even more now. I don't know why. He's there for like the end of the game and that's it, and I love him. Ryoji slowly develops the weight of the world on his shoulders as he gets closer and closer with the party, finding the beauty in life he was once designed to destroy. This mix of humanity and the possibility of ending everything was done expertly and expressed beautifully, all through this kid with slicked black hair and a goofy yellow scarf. And the last thing, something I've been excited to talk about this entire time, the Nyx fight. Oh my god, this is my favorite final boss in the entire Persona series. battle, Hymn of the Soul, has done so much justice, to the point where I didn't even fight for a while, so I could just stand and jam out to this amazing track. It feels like the entire game is built up to this moment, mashing the Velvet Room with bits and pieces of the entire game. The moveset complements that idea, mixing in ties of the Arcana, the means by which the story of the game is revealed one last time as S.E.E.S stares into the end of the world's eyes. Oh my god, Nyx ends up flourishing as a main antagonist. And then, we finally reach the ending. I think it's a lot more clear that the protagonist is giving up his life for the sake of everybody else's now, and it's a beautiful, poetic conclusion to this deep story. Every social link and conversation mentioning that he looks terrible was just a great touch. And, once those 4 notes of memories of you started, after all that I've been through, the hype that I tried to build for this game, the amazing experience I had, and just my genuine excitement and love for this story, that was it. The floodgates opened. Persona 3 Reload feels like an anomaly. It's more than anything I'd ever hoped for, although there's a few tidbits here and there that seem to have gone missing. Its combat stacked up against a game that I have tattooed on my chest. The world looked like an art piece around every corner. There were so many cool little mechanics that made venturing into Iwatodai rewarding and stylish. I was left astounded at the end of this game. There was so much love and time put into crafting a pure work of Persona genius. I could talk about the details all day, but if anything, I love this game because it does something that's hard in any medium. It makes me feel. I could go and pick apart why its mythological ties are important or why its combat is peak JRPG, but in reality, it's just grounded. Each of these characters feel rooted and believable, especially when faced with such a harsh reality. The story about coming to terms with death sees some high peaks and hard-hitting valleys, each justifying this mess of the thing we call life. Doing everything you can to see your friends succeed, growing close and persevering against adversity. These experiences are all just as true as the game shows. And it's not even the story alone. A game like this introduces some awesome mechanics that tie everything together, so that the combat feels meaningful. It's got some of the best JRPG gameplay I genuinely have ever experienced, and turn-based combat that is just not repetitive. As you go through and craft personas and party members of your own, you just have some genuine fun with this cast. Plus, the player's personal experiences with the characters in Tartarus make you feel closer to the characters emotionally. I find it very hard to cry when consuming media, almost like I'm disconnected from the world behind that screen. Persona 3 Reload made me fall into tears a total of 6 times. I'm just some dude on the internet, so I won't go too in depth, but the storytelling through gameplay and dialogue resonated with some of the hardest moments in my life. All these characters you grow close to sting the most. It reminds the audience to live for the best things in life. Persona 3 Reload proved as a facilitator to tell me, hey, it's okay to feel bad. There's so much in life that kicks you down, but sometimes it's the crawl back up to the top that can be the most rewarding, and you don't have to go after it alone. Don't just live for yourself. Live for the relationships you cherish. Finding your own path through those close to you is more important than you can ever imagine. As someone who struggled with an ominous feeling of loneliness, no matter if I'm alone or not, I needed an outside source to help me ground myself. And by God, did Persona 3 Reload hit every nerve in my damn system. Oh, and with suicidal symbolism. Yeah, that's just a really long way of saying this game is really good. And that's enough being transparent on the internet for today.